Avengers Assemble! TGLC is bringing the Marvel Universe to life this season, and you already know that this music mix is about to be epic. At the time we're recording this, it's gonna be dropping tonight. So, what better time to welcome in Victor Rosario from TGLC and Patrick from Cheer Music Pro. Guys, welcome. How's everyone feeling for this release tonight?
I'm feeling good.
Yeah, I'm super psyched. I can't wait for the world to hear what we've come up with this time.
Awesome. Well, we'll start with just that. Both of you, Victor, if you want to start, how would you describe what fans are going to get with this music this season?
I've been thinking about that question ever since you sent it to me, and I think the word that describes it best is unorthodox. So I
Ooh.
think I was telling Patrick the other day, I've just reached a stage in my career as a cheer coach, choreographer. For me, it's just about doing what is fun, what's inspiring, what makes the kids have a great time, what makes me want to be in it for another 20, 30 years, however long I have left in this sport. And every time that I've ever gotten away from just doing the things that I enjoy, what I think are cool, even if it's not, super well received by everybody else, I didn't love it. So like this is what I want to do. I want to push the envelope again, and who better to do it with than Patrick?
I think for me, I love I love the fact that this music is really different. It's definitely a step away from what we've done the last few years with TGLC. We really tried to go a little more theatrical and a little more like trailer music, if you will. So it really feels like you're in a movie. I think the theme really calls to that. So I think the word for me is just very different. But it still feels like a TGLC mix, I think. So that's what we were going for. We really wanted to do something that, you know, like that made people step back and go, "Oh, wow, that was different."
I would 100% agree. And like you said, I think it's, we both have this vision of what more can be done. And it shouldn't always be the same. I think most of cheerleading mixes and most of cheerleading routines follow a very specific, predictable format. And I think every time we put out a TGLC mix and a theme and a routine, people at first don't know how to feel about it. I mean, the one that comes immediately to mind was when we did the EMTG mix, and people were saying this is not cheerleading music, and then ended up being the hottest mix of the entire year. There were videos of it playing all over the world. Everybody's doing the dance, and But again, we're shocked by the things that we don't understand that are not the norm. And I think this does that again. It's going to challenge people to think, wow, so cheerleading mixes could be another way. It doesn't have to be what we have always known and done, even though those are still great, but there's other ways to do it.
I love it. It's a great start to thinking outside
Yeah.
the box. All right, so Patrick, you mentioned you wanted that feel of people like they're in the movie theater watching this. And I love that you say that because I got a little sneak peek, and that's exactly how I felt with this opening sequence. The fans are going to love it. But give us a little behind the scenes of that opening sequence. How did you go about bringing that to life?
Well, so it was Victor's idea, I think, to start off the way it starts off. And I guess this is going to release after people have heard it, so we could talk about what it is. It starts off like kind of with a parody of a scene that's in Iron Man, where Stark comes in and he said, he claps and wakes up Jarvis and he says, "Wake up, Daddy's home." And we just thought that was so funny and such a really catchy way to like start the whole mix off. And then um, I got to practice really, really hard doing my Jarvis voice. Um, that's actually my voice. And so I practiced and like did it a whole bunch of times. And I spent a lot of time trying to perfect the actual effect that they use on his voice to try to make it like sound believable. It was a lot of fun to do. I think we went back and forth. We kind of knew that this was going to be the beginning of the routine for a while. We talked back and forth about it, but the actual execution of it, I always wait until I do the mix when I have the video and kind of build it so I can see exactly how much space I have to say the words and make sure it lands in the right spot so I can transition to the right music. So I didn't really know how it was going to sound until I did it.
Yeah, I have to say he never ceases to amaze me, and I love the fact that just watching him right now saying his part, how he gets excited about it. That's the whole vibe that I'm going for. I love when people hear our mixes, they watch our routine, they're getting up to be a part of the experience. It really makes them feel like a kid again. It just really pulls them in. And just the fact that, I mean, he knew what was going to be going into this mix, over a year ago. And I can see how excited he was. It gets even him to be able to challenge his abilities and see how far he can go with the music and all the sound design, even though he's been doing it for as long as I've been doing cheerleading routines.
Awesome. And Victor, we've got to hear your instant reaction too. Right off the bat, what is your favorite part of this mix so far?
It's fun. I don't know if I have a. I mean, the opening is definitely. Yeah, I'll probably say the opening is definitely the. It really pulls on my heartstrings. I've watched all the Iron Man movies and all the Marvel movies, literally probably 10 times over each one, to find all the best one-liners and inside jokes and quotes and emotional moments, funny moments. And yeah, that one, as soon as I heard that one, I was like, that definitely has to be the start of the routine. The the way that Tony Stark says his piece and then the way that Jarvis responds. Our routines, at least the past 8 years that we've been doing these theme routines, because we didn't always do them. For us, it's about telling a story. And so it just really brings in the story right from the start of we're just getting off of last year's season, winning the world championships again for the fifth time in a row, 10th time overall. And, daddy's home. We're back and we're gonna do it again. And Jarvis, aka Patrick, he's telling us how, your congratulations on the world ceremonies. They were a huge success. It's always a pleasure watching you work and just all the personality that goes into it. It just really sets the stage for the whole experience.
I love it. That just like gave me the chills because that's exactly how it felt. That is so awesome. All right. Well, going off that as well, Victor, TGLC always has these themes that are larger than life. Like you said, you're telling a story. It's so fun to watch. How do you go back to the drawing board each season and think about what's going to come next?
So it happens pretty organically. It's not always the same process. Back in 2018-19, when we decided we wanted to push the envelopes and do something different, do something that was fun, it just happened to be that the Cobra Kai series came out around that same time, and that was one of my favorite movies growing up from the '80s, The Karate Kid, and all that, and that kind of spawned the whole ideas of doing these themes and telling the story. So we literally wrote down about 10 different possible themes that we could do over the next decade if that one went over well, and how we could continue to push the envelopes and evolve with the music and the choreography. And so this Avengers wasn't supposed to be this year, but the way things have just played out with us winning 3, 4, 5 times in a row and now going for number 6, we kind of put the one we wanted to do this year on the back burner and said, let's do this sixth one for the sixth Infinity Stone.
Ooh, okay. That's awesome. All right, so when did you first get to tell the team about the Avengers theme and how did they react?
So it was about 6 weeks into this season. We do what we call work week, where we do about a week long of practices and just trying to solidify stunt groups and figure out which skills are going to go into the routine, how we want them to connect, what formation we're going to use. And so that was around the second week of July when we did that. And we already had this theme picked out since the middle of last season, probably around December, January. We knew this was going to be the theme for this year. So since a lot of the things that we were doing in that work week, in their practices with the choreography, with the skills, we're kind of hinting at the theme. We're like, might as well just tell them because they're probably going to figure it out when when they're asking or when they're noticing, oh, we're having them do this skill and land in this position. It's kind of giving it away. So we're like, all right, guys, so here's the theme. And we showed them a little sneak peek of the uniform design and some other ideas that we have in mind. And they were super pumped about it. I mean, Avengers movies, Marvel, like the comic book kid has become a staple in mainstream society now, and it went from super geeky back in the days to now it is a huge part of the movie market and the streaming services and all those different things. So everybody knows who Marvel is. Everybody knows Iron Man, Thor, all the different Avengers movies, and so they were super pumped about it.
Awesome. And Patrick, what do you remember about when you first heard about the theme, and how does having a theme as fun as this one help in your creative process?
I mean, I love hearing Victor's ideas for themes. And this one, like he said, we've been talking about this one. We were gonna do it before, and then kind of put it to the side and decided to wait and do it this year. So I've been kind of thinking about it off and on, and we've been talking about it. Like Victor said, it happens organically. We'll be talking about this year, but also talking about next year because we kind of already have some ideas in the works and stuff like that. So it feels very like we never force anything, and we never like throw something together last minute. Everything is very intentional. That's one of the things I love about working with Victor is he really thinks through his ideas and everything from the music to the uniform to the skills to the choreography to every person on the floor. Like everything is very intentional and everything has a purpose. If it doesn't have a purpose, then it doesn't go into his routine or his season. So that's one of the things that I really love is the attention to detail. I'm also very process oriented, very detail oriented. So it's really cool to collaborate with somebody else that I think is like minded in that way. Very definitely very different types of creativity, but they mesh together really really well. So it's really cool. Obviously, I think I think Victor probably floats his theme ideas by me and like to see if I'm excited about it or if I have ideas that are popping up. But I did pretty instantly. We started talking about the Iron Man stuff. It's one of my favorite movies, so I love all those parts, and I love the quirky, sarcastic, character that Tony Stark plays. And then we start looking up all the clips and like trying to figure out and imagine them as funny cheer voiceovers. So
Right.
yeah, it was exciting.
And I think that's the thing that I've really enjoyed the most about doing the themes versus the 25 years prior to that we didn't, is that it gives us the ability to talk about ourselves, talk about what we do, boast about ourselves, but not doing it in the typical cheer rap way where every other word you're saying your team's name again and you're talking about how we're the best. So we still get to do that, but in a funny way, in a sad way, all these different emotions can be brought out and personalities using different voices and then using the different clips from the movies that people might remember if they've seen them. So it just gives, I think, a fresh perspective to all the lyrics and the musical construction and design. I'm sure for Patrick and his writers that are doing so many different mixes and having to figure out, well, how do we talk about this team and really hype them up in a different way, and it's really hard to do that unless you have something to kind of draw inspiration from. So this really helps lend itself to that process.
And I love how you both talked about how fun it is to work together. But could you give us a little bit more insight into that? Like, what does a creative brainstorm look like for the two of you? Victor, are you coming with notes, or what kind of gets the ball rolling first?
Yeah, no, we definitely, um, his whole process, the control room, he has a section in there where you plug in whatever ideas you have, quotes, links, everything under the sun that you could think of, and just we just brain dump everything into there. And then he reads it, his team reads it. We're going back and constantly revising it and just drawing inspiration from one another. And he'll say something, and then that sparks an idea, and we just it's a very smooth collaboration where we're just feeding off of each other's energy and finding ways to improve on what the other person said, or taking a different direction. And then, yes, there's a lot of one-liners and quotes from Iron Man movies, but because it's Avengers and because it's Marvel, we have so many different movies we can pull from. So there's going to be bits and pieces from Black Widow, from Thor, from Hulk, from this. All those characters are somehow in there, but it all makes sense because it's sticking to the storyline. It's it's following a pattern in telling the story based off of where we are at each section of the choreography, so it makes sense to the listener. And at the end of the mix, it just brings it all together. So it doesn't feel random at all, even though it's a lot of random bits and pieces from a bunch of different movies, but it all somehow comes together. He does a great job with setting up the punchlines, or setting up the voiceovers with custom lyrics that they write. So it's a really great marriage between the two.
I just like Victor said, he does a great job of like he usually gives me like a whole glossary of terms, which is so helpful. You would think that was simple, but it's not, right? Like, but he comes up with like all these different terms, but then also like, hey, I really like these scenes, and I could see like this word being flipped here, and here's a whole bunch of ideas, and like he said, with this being TGLC going for their sixth in a row, there's six Infinity Stones, so this is like the sixth and final stone. So like in one of the songs, like we mention all the different names of all the stones. So there's all these different like hidden things in there if you like really read into it and listen to the lyrics. Um, we also sort of have like once we decide on the theme and after we kind of gone through the notes, Victor does a good job of just kind of letting me like sit on it and marinate on it. And I listen through it, and then we'll have a meeting, myself, my team, and his staff, and we'll talk through some of the ideas and kind of brainstorm those. And then we'll start to create. We're not trying to create the entire mix, just trying to create some of the pieces, and then we'll come back and meet again. We'll play and talk about some of those pieces. Okay, what's next? We'll start to write some of the musical parts, the melodic songs, and um, we'll go through those, and then we meet again and talk about dance. And then right before we do the mix, because I always know that we want to make sure some of these like voiceovers land in certain places. Victor and I'll meet like the day before I do the mix, and we'll talk through them. Like even though they're ideas we've already talked about, I like to talk about it right before when I don't have another mix to do, and his is the next one. That way, it's like really fresh in my head. Some of his specific ideas, and I'll go in my session and make notes. But it's a process. Again, I think people think that the music just happens like in a couple of hours, but it's really a creative process that happens over months, slowly. And it's sort of, it's like all these ideas get constructed and thought about and talked about all up until the moment where I sit down and like put them all together like a puzzle. And then the other thing I'll say is like Victor gives me a lot of creative freedom. Like, here's the idea, and this is the way I think it could go. But he also gives me the freedom that like when I'm actually building the mix, if musically it doesn't work and it needs to go this way because I need to transition this into this, like he gives me the freedom to be able to like also influence the arrangement. Sometimes he'll go back and like shift his choreography around slightly to match what I did. Sometimes he's like, "Hey, that doesn't work." And I'm like, "Yeah, but this has to happen there." And then we talk about like we just go back and forth and talk about it because he understands his world way better than I do, and I understand the musical world better than he does. So we just trust one another. I don't know. It's really cool. It's a really cool process that we've sort of developed over the last 10 years.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I would just add to that. I think that a lot of coaches, coaches, gym owners, choreographers, where they kind of miss the mark with working with their music producer, if they have the opportunity to do that, like we do, is that you have to give them some type of direction. It's almost a bad thing to be like, whatever you think, and you have so many possibilities. Even as a choreographer, when I'm constructing the routine, I look for that one spot where it has to be this way. For instance, my co-ed stunts, there's only so many ways I can construct these groups. If I want to have X amount of this particular stunt, I have to have these flowers with these bases, or it's just not going to happen. So that becomes my starting point, and then I work forward and backwards off of that to build the rest of the routine. And if I just leave it so vague that he can go in any direction, he'd probably drive himself nuts trying to figure out where do I go, where do I start. So I try to give him enough direction to where he can figure out a starting point, but then also that freedom to let things develop as they should if he sees that they should go a certain way, as he explained.
Great stuff from both of you there. That's awesome. A lot more than just the 2 minutes and 30 seconds for sure. But all right, you kind of mentioned it, Victor, about when TGLC first started doing these themes. I kind of always think of you all as the OGs to really bring a theme to life. But back then, it used to be some fun songs, maybe a dance that had those elements. But now we go big. We've got the uniforms, we've got the awesome merch you're wearing, that insane reveal video that you all did. So both of you, you've been doing this a long time. How would you describe what it's been like to watch these teams evolve over time and to become such a big thing in the cheer world?
I mean, one word, fun. It's just so much fun to do it. It really, the themes have really helped make the experience and the season for the athletes feel different. Each year I try to think about, well, what about the kid that is now going on her or his third or fourth year on the team? If you're in a specific level or age group in cheerleading nowadays, because of the way the rubric is designed, the score sheet is designed, you're probably doing the same routine every single year, the same skills, maybe a slightly different order, maybe not even, maybe you're doing the same order because it just works for your team and you've been really successful at it. So I try to think about how do I make it special so that they're still feeling like it's fresh, it's fun, it's not boring. And so the themes have really helped to do that because nobody will ever be the karate kids again in our gym. Nobody will ever be the fighter pilots or the race car drivers. And those kids, when they come back and they have to come back and watch this year's routine and see this team and like we're getting ready to do our showcase this coming Sunday, like, oh, what is it going to look like? They feel that sense of pride. They are part of this whole legacy, but also they have their autonomy that they were the only team that got to wear that uniform and do that mix and that routine. And it just, each year it's special. And I think that's super important. I think that's something that they're going to remember 20, 30 years from now, when they're bringing their kids and grandkids to us and they can talk about those stories and look back on those YouTube videos. It makes it a lot more special than the years when it was just, regular radio music that you would go to competition and kind of like the Bring It On movie. Five other teams had your same pyramid song, so it's really cool nowadays. I think people thought 15 years ago, whenever it was that radio music wasn't going to be allowed as much as what it was back then, that we were going to lose uh, what cheerleading was all about. And I think it actually opened up the door for a really cool possibilities and make it even more unique. Um, so yeah, I just love being able to have a resource like Patrick and Amori Jones and everybody else that is part of his new level team to be able to pull this off. And then obviously our partnership with Rebel and No Limit Shoes, like we just have the ability to bring the whole thing to life and not just do a mix that talks about fire or candy and that's our theme, but we can really get into the uniforms, how the merch looks. Our shoes have custom designs on them and logos to go to match the uniforms. Like we can do so many things nowadays that we couldn't do back, the first 20, 25 years, that we had Top Gun and TGLC. So I'm really enjoying this phase of where our sport has gone.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Victor hinted on it a little bit. When we were able to do custom and original composition, it like took themes to another level. Because it's not just like trying to find clips and songs. Like we can actually create a score. So it's been a lot of fun, and um, I think we're getting better at it because both of our skills are getting better as we go. I think the first theme that we did together, it was it was cool, but I think the ideas are even more developed now that we're in what, year 8 or 9 or something like that, working together. So
Yep.
it's really neat to see things grow. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun for me too. Victor also hinted on, I think whenever I sit down to make music, like I'm trying to find inspiration from somewhere, and that's the whole purpose of the control room, for the coaches to inspire the producers. Some of my inspiration comes from watching the routine and the video and like seeing where the skills hit, and that really influences and affects the arrangement and how I put it together. But the words and the lyrics and the ideas, like they either come from the theme or from the words and ideas that the coaches or athletes or wherever they get the ideas come from. So it's been cool to see the process grow, and we sit down at the end of every year, like, okay, what did we do well? What did we not do well? What can we do better? Oh, well, I really liked how we did this, and then we'll take that little bit and we'll try to carry it into the next one. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun. From the Karate Kid to the boxer to the doctor, ETMG. We did Top Gun, the fighter pilots. We've done really all over the map ideas. But I say the one comment is that we just really try to knock it out of the park and do something unique, that's never been done. Even if that theme has been done, we try to do it in a different way.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I can say, as a fan who's watching this all day, it is nothing but fun when TGLC takes the stage. So you both do an incredible job with that. All right, well, you said it. TG Takeoff is coming up this weekend. So, Victor, what are you most excited about with this year's TGLC routine?
Honestly, I'm so pumped to see how the sport has evolved, to see how the culture we've developed in our gym, specifically with this team. I mean, these kids work relentlessly. They work so hard. They're in there all the time, even on their off days, just trying to perfect things, trying to develop the skill and really understand the ins and outs of it, what really makes it work. So we're pushing the envelope with our difficulty. We're doing things that haven't been done. I wouldn't say in our sport, but definitely not in the senior large co-ed. You see it in open teams, you see it in collegiate level, but to see 13 to 19-year-old athletes doing the skills, doing the level of difficulty, the intricacies of the choreography and the patterns and the formations, the pace and speed of it, it's so impressive. Um, I'm really hoping that this weekend they'll be able to just put on a stellar performance. It's really tricky because 38 people have to have a great day at the same time, and there's so many moments where if you miss a grip, it affects the next thing, and then you lose that whole part. So it's really intricate. It's really fast paced. Like I said, it's really difficult, and it's visual and it's creative as always. And again, we're just trying to continue to every year push the envelope on what we're capable of doing. And I think the kids have realized that that's what the culture is all about at Top Gun, and they're rising to the occasion. You set the expectation, and they will surprise you. And that's that they're definitely doing that and more again this year.
Awesome. Well, we are so excited to see, and we're so excited for the world to get to listen to this music tonight. Before we go, any last words for these fans before they take a listen?
For me, I would just say enjoy it, listen to it a few times. If you, for some people, it's gonna be like, oh my God, it's the best thing I ever heard. And for some, it's gonna be like, what? Wait, what? What are they doing? It doesn't sound like a cheer mix. That was the whole point. If that's the way you feel, it was the whole point. So yeah, like I said, it's a funny thing. It's kind of like, we tell the kids, you have to, when you go out to compete, you almost have to pretend like you don't care so much about what you're about to do, because if you do, you get all worried and you get anxious and you end up making mistakes. So obviously you're training for a moment, you care. That's why you're devoting so much of yourself to the sport, all the time, energy, blood, sweat, and tears. But then when you get there, you almost have to pretend like you don't care, right? Same thing with our mixes. We obviously want the world to love the mixes. I want everybody to be blowing up, listening to the mix is on SoundCloud and YouTube for Patrick and for ourselves and for our kids to feel proud of it. But at the same time, I have to pretend like I don't care. I'm doing this because this is the way that I think All Star cheerleading should go, and I want to continue to inspire the world of All Star cheer and cheerleading in general. And for people to think outside the box and realize that there's more than one way to skin a cat, and be creative, think outside the box, push the boundaries. Once we start to do that as a company, as a brand, is when we really started to reap the benefits and see the success. And whenever we just kind of stayed with the status quo, it didn't amount to the things that we wanted to do. So we realized that we just have to stay true to our identity. And I think this is right along with that, with pushing those boundaries. And it may not be for everybody, but that's okay.
Well, I think everyone's gonna love it. I will say that when you listen to the music, it and you're not seeing the visual, it would be like going in and watching a movie, but the screen goes out. And vice versa. If you watch the routine and there's no sound, it's not going to be as impressive and as impactful as if you have the score behind it. So when you listen to the music, just remember that's one piece of the puzzle. And wait until showcase and watch the routine and see the routine with the music and see how they work together. And then you should be able to form your opinion. But I think people are going to really love it. It's a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, we are just so excited for the day we'll be able to get that full picture. But for now, Victor, Patrick, thank you so much for joining us and giving us this awesome behind the scenes look. It's going to be a great year. And don't forget, everyone, you can follow along with Top Gun TGLC all season long. Their routine will be with sound on FloCheer and Varsity TV to watch. That's the best part. Thank you all so much. This has been awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you. Can't wait
Yeah,
for everybody
thank
to
you.
check it out.
Thanks, Amber.